Phillip Duffe. I was in the Army from June 1998 through June 2005.
We're here today talking with Phillip Edward Duffe, born July 4th, 1980. He served in Iraq during Operation Iraqi Freedom as a member of the United States Army. When he left the military, he had the rank of Staff Sergeant E6. This interview is being conducted in Arnold, Missouri on March 9th, 2012. My name is Philip Falconier. Sergeant Duffe is my friend, co-worker, and shift supervisor. The video equipment is being operated by Tom Struckhoff. And this interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress. So, Phil, let's start off with just some biographical details. Where were you born? What is your birth date?
I was born here in St. Louis. Birth date is July 4th, 1980.
Okay. And by here in St. Louis, we are in the St. Louis metropolitan area, although we are technically in Arnold, Missouri. Do you have any brothers or sisters?
Yes, I have one brother. His name is Josh.
Okay.
He also is a veteran as well.
Oh, okay. What were you doing before entering the service?
Before entering the service, I was in high school. I actually graduated high school in 1998 at the age of 17, and I was working at Jack in the Box at the time. And I actually went into basic training in June of 1998 while I was still 17, and I actually turned 18 while I was in basic training.
So you went straight in out of high school, huh?
Straight in.
So what led to that decision?
Well, at the time, I did not feel that I was ready to go to college, and I knew I needed to do something with my life. And my brother and I, growing up, he had always wanted to join the Army, and he followed through with it. He had the recruiter over as soon as he was of age, and we're only a year apart. And I actually just decided one day I'll start talking to the recruiter, and I figured the best thing for me at the time was to join the Army.
All right. Now, we already have talked about the fact that your brother was in the Army. Did you have any other family members who served in any kind of service?
I did. I had, my grandfather was in the Navy. I had some cousins who were in the Marines, stuff like that. But as of currently, there is none.
Okay. So, you said that you entered the Army in '98 and you turned 18 in basic training. Where did you go through basic training?
I went to Fort Benning, Georgia.
Okay. What's that like down there?
It actually wasn't too bad. It was, weather was a little different. It was a little warmer down there. But, it was the same as everywhere. You got a lot of woods and stuff around an Army base, and, they seem to stick you right in the middle of all that.
I've never actually had anything to do with the service myself, so what was going through your mind when you came through the front gates of that place?
Really just the unknowing. It was a new adventure. I was young. I never left the state of Missouri when I was, 17.
Mm-hmm.
So I really didn't know what to expect. Didn't know what type of people I would meet. You've always heard the horror stories and stuff like that. But I kind of just was playing it by ear, day by day. And when I went through those gates, it wasn't bad the very first day. And it actually wasn't bad the entire time. But the culture shock hit quick, So, but yeah, it was just the unknowing. So.
Okay. So, how did you get down there? I mean, actually, let's start right from the very beginning, because I know nothing about that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you just get a plane ticket and fly, or?
Yeah, we start out at your home of record. So, even though we are in Arnold right now, St. Louis is where the MEP station is here, and the recruiters get you all ready to go, and you stay in a hotel downtown in St. Louis the night before you're supposed to leave. And for us, they give you a bus ticket and a plane ticket, and you just go. There was a group of us, I think there was 2 or 3 of us that were headed out, so got to travel together, which was a little better than, you could have somebody to talk to and kind of discuss what's about to happen. So, yeah.
Okay. You've already talked a little bit about the culture shock that you experienced when you went into basic. What kind of adjustments did you have to make? What was it that was so different from what you had experienced growing up in this area?
Well, I would say the culture shock for me was, growing up in this area, there's not a lot of cultural diversity, in the 1980s and the 1990s around here. So, the big thing is meeting a lot of different people from different parts of the United States, and some from other countries, and dealing with that aspect was huge and different, and just being on my own, making my own decisions, stuff like that. From being a 17-year-old kid living at home to the next day, just thrust into basic training and getting up early and starting your career. So.
Now, this is maybe jumping ahead a few years, but I know that you've talked to me in the past about actually looking back, once you'd been in the military for a little while, looking back at some of the raw recruits coming in, and it kind of addresses the same situation that you're talking about. How actually, once you were a sergeant, how you had to kind of look out for the new recruits, because outside of the base, there are actually businesses that know that these new young raw recruits are coming in. Why don't you tell us a little bit
Sure.
about that?
Unfortunately, there's always going to be predators out there, preying on the younger generation that's coming into the military. And no matter what duty station I was at, there was always, things, car salesmen and pawn shops, and these loan places that are out there to basically take advantage of the younger soldiers coming in with bad credit or no credit, and they sucker them into large interest rate loans and vehicles and stuff like that, where after a while, it got so bad that we actually, if they wanted to buy a car, we'd ask if they'd bring us along with them, stuff like that, because it does happen, and everywhere I've been so far, I've seen it there. So
I found that interesting. I really appreciated the fact that you actually would go with your guys and just, they're away from their parents for the first time, and that you would actually help them out with that sort of thing.
Right.
I found that interesting. So beyond basic training, going back to your own training, what other specialized training did you receive during the service?
I received a lot. As an infantryman, you're always training every day, night and day, no matter what the weather is. And we're always, as an infantryman, looking to, further your physical fitness and your knowledge of your job. So in doing that job, there's a lot of schools and stuff that you're expected to attend. Like air assault school. When I was in Hawaii, I attended air assault school, which is a pretty tough school physically and mentally, and we did a lot of other sorts of training with weapons. Obviously, our primary tool, in our profession, and there's so much additional training that we went through. It's kind of hard to even think about it in name right now. So.
Well, I know you said something about expert infantry training.
Yeah, expert infantryman's it's a badge that you wear if you qualify for it, and that's a really big thing among infantrymen. It's a pride thing. It's an honor thing, and what that consists of is it pretty much takes a couple of months set up to start to train for this type of event. It's usually a battalion or sometimes a brigade size event where, every infantryman without an expert infantryman's badge would train and try to pass the standards, which are very strict, in order to obtain one. And, the key thing about that is the only people who can teach the classes are other infantrymen who have already earned their expert infantry badge. So that was a really big point of pride and honor for me. My first time doing it, I remember it was not fun. We were out, in the fields, sleeping out there, getting up, training every day for weeks. And once the actual test day came, you just go to each station, and there's 30 plus stations if I remember correctly, and the standards, like I said, very strict. So if you do get it, it's not something that's given to you. And so I'm very proud of that achievement.
And this isn't something that like they have a facility ready to go, and occasionally they bring a group through and just run you through the paces, right?
No, it's like, for instance, I earned my expert infantryman's badge when I was stationed at Schofield Barracks, Hawaii. But when I was stationed at Fort Campbell, I actually was one of the NCOICs, the non-commissioned officers in charge of 2 different stations. And basically what they tell you is they hand out what your specific task is going to be of training, and they give us an area in the woods or a field, and they say, go make your stations. And so basically I had a crew with me, other soldiers who had their expert infantryman's badge, and we hacked out an area, filled sandbags, put tarps up, camouflage nets, whatever we had to do to successfully have an area to train these soldiers on specific tasks. So yeah, and pretty much everybody, that's how they did it. They kind of went out, and we kind of try to make it so it kind of flows, because there's a group of soldiers that go to this station. Once we've trained on this, then they go to this station here. So we kind of try to make it flow and try to work. But it's definitely not something that's just already set up and out there.
Okay. How about the Air Assault School? You were talking, and you mentioned that. I know you and I have talked about that a little bit. There were some things about having to, and I don't fully understand it, but I don't normally think of infantry soldiers dealing with aircraft, but you were having to learn something about the loads and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
What's that about?
Air Assault School is important. We do learn a lot about stuff that typically we don't deal with on an everyday basis, but for instance, Fort Campbell, Kentucky is one of the only air assault divisions in the United States. And we deal a lot with helicopters there. And you really don't understand how much you deal with them until you're on a deployment. So during the school, you learn about each aircraft and their capabilities. How many soldiers they can carry, what's the weight limits of each one, how to hook up equipment underneath the helicopter. If a Black Hawk helicopter comes down and hovering, how to take these crate of MREs, of food, and attach it properly to the helicopter so they can take it off to somewhere else, or fuel or whatever. It's very important because it's very dangerous, and it's something that once again you're expected to learn as an infantryman, it's Yeah, I mean, everything from carrying vehicles. I never thought once I was actually going to the school, because it was pre, my deployment to Iraq, that I would actually ever use it. But we used it a lot. And another thing that teaches you a lot in that school is rappelling. Fast roping down a rope off of something, and out of a helicopter. A lot of times we'll probably get into this later on, going into an area where they can't land a helicopter, and you have to get out with a rope.
Okay.
So a lot of that stuff that they teach you is very important for deployments and stuff like that.
Sure. Well, let's digress a little bit. Why don't you give me a quick timeline of your service, your duty stations and responsibilities at those areas?
Sure. First, I was 18 years old. I was stationed in Korea. It was considered Area 1, which is around the DMZ, Demilitarized Zone. And there, I was just a young soldier, just learning the ropes. I actually had an additional duty while I was there. I was put in the mail room as one of the mail clerks. So I had to, go and take the test and everything like that to be able to handle packages. And at the time, I didn't like it. I was like, why did I get picked with this? But, as you get older and you look back on stuff like that, you realize that it wasn't that bad, and actually, it helped you out learning stuff. But in Korea, we did a lot of field training. It was all just preparation for possible attack, and it was just basically day-to-day training. So,
why don't you tell me about the? I know you told me at one time something about a building that is actually on the border where. When the two governments need to communicate, need to meet for some reason, they might go into that building. Why don't you describe that for me? I think that would be interesting.
Yeah, on the DMZ, there's a lot of, it's very interesting up there, and on the actual DMZ, there's a building that's half in North Korea and half in South Korea. And so we got to go in that building and walk around, and they talk about the history of that building and the meetings that took place there. And if you like history, you can't get any better than that. So, and outside that building and around the area, you can look across and see the North Korean soldiers just staring at you. And kind of what they do is they do this thing where they have their body behind the edge of a wall and half their body sticking out, and they just kind of stare at you. And I think they called it a Taekwondo fighting stance or something like that. But they were extremely disciplined, as well as the South Korean soldiers and us. But it was definitely something that I'll definitely remember, and for the rest of my life. And being in that room and up there, was a great experience.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So from Korea, where did you go?
Yeah, I went to, I did a little stint at Fort Lee. And while I was there, I was kind of doing some training. And then I got tasked with training soldiers for PLDC, which is a primary leadership development course. When, a soldier wants to go from, an E4 to an E5 sergeant, they have to go to this 30-day school provided, through the military. And I kind of got tasked with teaching them land navigation, being how I was an infantryman, and I had a lot of experience with land navigation and stuff like that. I think it was the battalion sergeant major came up to me and asked if I would do this along with another guy, and we said sure. And so we did that for a while. And also, I was a driver for any type of meetings that they had for incoming colonels and generals. I remember I was assigned to Colonel Quinlan at the time, which I think he's a general now, but I'm not sure. But he had an aide with him that was a captain, and I was tasked as his driver for a week or two. And that was a great experience for me too. I mean, because I got to find out how the other side actually operates, and they stay busy. People think they're not, but they stay extremely busy from sun up to sundown and meetings. And granted they're in meetings, but that's stressful stuff too. And then taking him back to his hotel room and actually helping the aide book the rooms and stuff like that, because he's a busy guy too. But it was very, very interesting. And
so when you say the other side, you mean commissioned officers?
Yeah,
Okay.
I do. I mean, the higher up commissioned officers, and it was a pleasant experience for me, and I'm glad I got to do that as well. So.
And then now Fort Lee, where is that at?
That's in Virginia. It's on the Virginia.
Okay. And then
I went to Hawaii. I was in Virginia for less than a year, I think, and then I got sent over to Hawaii, which was great. It was on my wish list. And so, being in Hawaii, I was once again training, but the training there is different from the training in Korea, simply because over there you got a lot of sand beaches that they like to get you on, work those muscles in your legs, and a lot of mountainous regions that we like to road march up and run. And I was always told that if you get stationed at Schofield Barracks, Hawaii, that you better be able to run. And they were right. You did learn to run, and run hard and long. So yeah, it was. I loved being in Hawaii.
Despite having to run on the beaches and
yeah, that was. But usually after a while, they cut you loose and you could play some, football on the beach. So you worked hard, but you played hard too. So.
Okay.
Yeah, and while I was in Hawaii, we got tasked for a deployment to Bosnia. So we spent a lot of our time training for that, and it was a peacekeeping mission. And that was actually the first time that I would, actually go into a foreign country and actually have to deal with, any sort of threat. So it was a very interesting time for me, and you take your job extremely serious because you never know. So yeah, we trained and we actually deployed to Bosnia, and I was in the Srebrenica area of Bosnia, which there's a lot of history in that area of massacres and stuff like that. So yeah, and then from Bosnia we went back to Hawaii, and
then from Hawaii you went to?
Well, from Hawaii I went to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, 101st Airborne Division.
Okay. And then came the big deployment.
Yeah. Then came Operation Iraqi Freedom, and so we got geared up and for the possibility to deploy, and we deployed. So yeah, that was definitely interesting and new, and I'm actually glad that I had the experience of training and actually going to a foreign country with a threat, even though this was a different type of threat and a different task of not peacekeeping, which is what our task was in Bosnia. We really didn't know what our task was going to be in Iraq, but the experience of being in Korea overseas and being in Bosnia, I think helped prepare me a lot for what I was getting ready to go through in Iraq.
Okay.
So.
Well, why don't we go back to Bosnia?
Mm-hmm.
You talked about the fact that it was your first deployment with any kind of threat, and you did have some threat in Korea. It was more of a chronic threat, not something that was immediate.
Sure.
But in Bosnia, things were still in a state of flux.
Mm-hmm.
And so you did have some day-to-day immediate threat. I think you told me one of your duties was preparing, going in ahead of returning villagers.
Yeah.
Why don't you explain a little bit about that? Why was it necessary for you to have to go in before the villagers? What were the dangers you were looking for, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, that was a big thing that we dealt with a lot. Returnees is what we called them, and they were villagers that were run out by the Serbs. And the interesting thing was we would go into the area, and it was already pre-scheduled that they would arrive on buses at this time, and we would be there. And when we went there, it was a very emotional scene. There was it was all females, and
why was that?
Due to the fact that during the Bosnian conflict, the Serbian army killed, murdered all the males, their sons, their husbands, and you really didn't get the full feel of that until the returnees came back. And as soon as they got off the buses, they would look at their houses, which were destroyed, by the way. The army went through and the Serb army went through and just destroyed every house. I mean, literally, I patrolled hillsides and everywhere in there. I never saw a house that was untouched by the Serb army, and unless they were rebuilding. But like I said, going back to where it didn't really hit you until you saw these women get off the bus, immediately burst into tears, and you could just tell that they're reliving all the stuff they went through and remembering all their sons, husbands, brothers. And it was one of those things where you were there and you were proud to be there because you wanted to help these people and you wanted to make sure that they came back safe. So I mean, just to see that and be there and have it all those emotions play out really hit you.
And you said that you wanted you were there to make sure they returned safely. What were the dangers that you were actually potentially having to face prior to their arrival?
Well, there still was a lot of people unhappy with them coming back, and there was a majority of the time there was already a family living in their house that had moved in, and while they were gone. So they had a lot of dangers as far as confronting the family that was already moved into their home. And if there was nobody in their home, usually there was a reason why. And what we found a lot was the house was booby-trapped. The yards were booby-trapped with landmines. So that way, they were obviously looking into the future. When they do come back, they're still going to be harmed. And, which is gruesome, I mean, that some people can actually do that. But we worked with NATO and worked with a lot of the other armies, the Russian army, and we tried to get these areas cleared out as much as we could and provide protection for the people that were clearing them out. But that was one of the huge things that we had to help them with, as well as just people wanting to physically harm them for coming back. So there was an instance where there was shots fired at a building prior to our arrival. And they were trying to send a message to the returnees as well as us. And, obviously we're not going to be frightened off by that. So we just stepped up our end and made a safe return for them.
You had told me at one point, you mentioned earlier in the interview about the fact that prior to driving these people out of their village, the Serbian army had basically rounded up and murdered most of the men in the village. Mm-hmm. Of course, they had to dispose of their bodies, and we've heard a lot in the news over the years about locating mass graves and that sort of thing. You actually were involved in some of that, but not in the capacity that I would have expected. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Mass grave sites are very real, and they're all over. And while they're being discovered, because there's people searching for them constantly, based off of tips of people who were actually there during the event, or things like that. And when they do discover them, we got tasked out with pulling security and protection for the people who are actually excavating these bodies out. Obviously, if the reason why we were there, if they're found, a lot of evidence that could be in there to get a lot of people in trouble, and they wanted to stop that. So we had to start pulling security for these people while they're working the grave sites, and cleaning them up and getting all the remains back to labs and stuff like that, and try to get them identified. But yeah, that was another real time where it just you never really realize, you hear these things, but you never realize it until you actually see the remains coming out of the ground, the shoes and the clothes and the bones and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a very real thing, and I'm sure they're gonna be finding them for some years to come.
Now, what year was this in that you were over there?
I was there in 2001.
You were there in 2001, so
yeah.
It's been 11 years since then.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I believe you said you were in the 11th deployment?
Yeah, it was either 2001 or 2002, I'm not quite sure, one of those 2 years. But yeah, I was in the S411, which is Stabilization Force 11, and that just, the number represents how many different groups came through to provide the protection and the security for that area.
In about how long a period of time would one group stay in the area?
We were there, I think, totally 7 months.
7 months.
Yeah, it's known as more of a 6-month deployment by the time everybody gets out of there. I think for us, we were there, for 7 months. So it's fairly quick. So
at this point, then, I guess what I'm getting at is S411. It would have been what, maybe 5 years since the U.S. military had initially gone in. So we're not talking about just a couple days or weeks or months after
right.
The entry of the U.S. into the conflict. We're talking about a matter of years, and still you were facing this kind of conflict in the area.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like you said, 6-7 years have gone by or whatever, and if you go through the area, it would look like it just happened within the past year or so. I mean, the buildings nothing was rebuilt. It was starting to be rebuilt slowly, and it just it was amazing. Yeah.
Okay. Well, why don't we go ahead and move on to Iraq then? Correct me if I'm wrong, but you were actually in the first wave in.
Yes, I was.
Okay. How did that come about? I mean, you said that you had prepared in case you were deployed. How did you find out that you were being deployed? What did that feel like to you, knowing that you were going into an area not as a peacekeeping mission, but as, for the first time, actually as basically an invading force?
Well, once again, as an infantryman, this sounds crazy to a lot of people and a lot of other people in the military with other jobs. But that's what we train for. That's what we train every day for, And so if you're given an opportunity, nobody wants to go to war, but when you're given that opportunity to actually go and do your job as an infantryman, which doesn't come around too often, you don't get scared, you get nervous, you kind of just start focusing really hard and just building that camaraderie with your guys, because that's huge, and you just get ready to face whatever challenges that come up. I mean, you just don't know what's going to happen. At the time, it was a really big scare for Saddam using gas and stuff like that, so we trained a lot with that, and that never came about for us. And stuff like that, you just get ready. You rely on your training, and you build that camaraderie with your guys, and you just kind of face it head on.
So when you went in, what capacity were you going in? What rank were you at that point?
I was an E5. I was a sergeant. I was a team leader at the time, which, platoons are broke down to squads, usually 4 or 5 squads. And within each squad, there's 2 teams. And you have like 2 team leaders and a squad leader as far as the leadership goes. And so at the time, I was in charge of a team within a squad. But later on, during the conflict, I got promoted to squad leader. So I had my own squad while I was over there.
Okay. So I don't know how many details you can, I don't know that you can go into, but kind of give me an idea of where you were inserted, where,
Sure.
the progress.
Well, during the first wave of the Iraqi war, there was no bases established. There was nothing. I mean, it was going through and finding places to sleep, at nighttime, whether it would be old warehouses or building houses, whatever, or just out in the open, out in the field. I've slept in the field many times out there. So, it was all about really just, once again, the unknowing, and moving from place to place. We eventually settled in Mosul, and from there we moved into a place called Al-Kindi, and it was an old, from what we understand, a missile factory that Saddam used, and it wasn't too hard to figure that out when you see all the types of, giant, munitions laying around everywhere. And so it was definitely, once we moved into there and we saw all these buildings that were obviously used for some sort of weapons making and ammunition making, and it had been in an airstrike. So a lot of the buildings were just completely destroyed with giant craters. And so we moved into our company moved into one of the buildings, the warehouses that wasn't destroyed, and we kind of made our home base there. So we kind of fortified that a little bit, put some guards out, and we just it was a daily thing as far as, we still didn't have toilets or anything like that. We ate MREs, and we had to drink bottled water. And I remember our supply guy would come around every morning and ask each squad how many blocks of ice we'd need, because he would take a squad and run around and go buy some big blocks of ice from these locals so we could have cool water and stuff like that. And so yeah, it was definitely, we didn't have any showers there. So yeah, it was no toilets, no showers. Now eventually we got showers, probably in I think it was around November of 2003 before we actually got showers installed, and that was simply a tank of water on the roof that was filled with local river water that it just kind of came down, and we kind of showered off with that. And but yeah, and we burned our trash right then and there. We had a big old trash pit. So yeah, it was home for us, and there wasn't any luxuries or anything like that, and we made the best of it.
So how long were you in Iraq?
I think our total deployment over there was 9 months.
9 months. So how long had you been in the warehouse before you finally got that wonderful shower?
Oh, actually, I don't even remember. It was a while.
Okay.
And it wasn't even, I remember they put in a hot water heater for us, and that sucker went out like within the first couple of weeks. So, I mean, it gave us a little bit of morale boost for a while, but yeah, it wasn't going to last when it was like one water heater and 100 guys going through there. So come on now.
Right.
But
So-
they tried.
What kind of action, I'm assuming by this point you were in a fairly stable situation. You weren't encountering like active Iraqi military any longer at that point, right?
There was no, the Iraqi soldiers at the time had already dispersed, and they were pretty much, by the time we were up there, they had all threw down their guns and left, and went into hiding, or, they were secretly planning stuff on the side, and that's kind of when the IED thing started happening. I guess they figured we got to fight them a different way. So that's when the whole IED things, when I first started, they were just literally, bombs laying on the side of the road. And then they got a little bit more, as time went on, detailed with their stuff. One of the big things that I remember that they did with IEDs was there was a lot of wild dogs running around there. So they would kill these dogs. They would shove these explosives inside of the dogs and just lay them on the side of the road in hopes that we would just drive by, see a dead dog, and not think anything of it, and boom. And so, they tried to outsmart us, and we would definitely learn and adapt to what they were doing. And it was a cat and mouse game with that kind of stuff. So.
You had told me at one time about an ambush near a bank or something.
Yeah, like I said, the Iraqi army was dispersed, and they were still fighting against us, but it was an unknown enemy. They were dressed in civilian clothes. You didn't know who they were, and so part of their tactics were they would try to learn what we were doing, and try to hurt us and attack us. And what we had established in our area of Mosul were these things that called COPs, combat outposts, and they were very effective. I mean, the idea was they would put a team or a squad of soldiers in these buildings around the city of Mosul to monitor sections of the highways, overpasses where they could place an IED. And that was our mission at the time. And basically, our orders were if we saw anything suspicious and people putting a bomb out there, we were supposed to shoot them. And I mean, it was very effective. They knew what we were doing. They could see us on the rooftops eventually. And it was only a matter of time before they would actually, start attacking these combat outposts, which they did a lot. But we were, fully prepared for that. So one morning, we try to change their drop-off and pickup times. Obviously, you don't want anything to be routine, but if somebody sits out long enough, they're going to find out what's going on. And this particular morning, we had just gotten back from all-night missions. And then we went out to change out one of these combat outposts, and they were waiting for us. They had a truck. They pulled up in a truck, and they had a guy that fired an RPG down this hill right into a Humvee full of guys. And then they unloaded two guys unloaded a clip apiece from an AK-47. And we counted about 60 shell casings that we found up on the top of the hill, and they drove off. So they accomplished their mission of trying to disrupt us, but it was just one of those things where, unfortunately, that's what's going to happen in that type of environment. So yeah.
Okay. One of the other interesting things that I remember you telling me about that area. Now, Mosul is in the north of the country, right?
Yeah, it's in the northern half of the country, yeah.
But it would be, say, north of Baghdad.
Yes, definitely.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And Mosul sounds like it's a pretty foreign name to most of us here in the United States. But then as you were telling me about it, you said a name which I recognized instantly, and that was Nineveh.
Mm-hmm.
And it just made it took me back. Of course, both you and I, growing up in America, learned in Sunday school about the city of Nineveh, the whole story of Jonah and the whale, and everything like that. But I've always thought of it as a Bible story.
Right.
But you were there, man.
Yes. In Mosul, they had Nineveh was there. I didn't know what it was at first either. It consists of a large area with just a huge wall around it with some towers, but I'd say 90% of it is destroyed. And in the area that is inside these walls is nothing, But I didn't know what it was either. None of us did, until we were told by our translators that we had with us. And we actually had a combat outpost up in one of the towers on the edge of the Nineveh ruins by a gate that they had. So yeah, once again, if you love history, you can't get any better than that. If you're familiar with the story and yeah, it was one of those things where, wow, it's history at its finest right there.
Right.
So.
Now, once again, you were in the first wave into Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
I recently had a brother-in-law who had to go and do a tour of duty in Afghanistan, and of course, we've been in Afghanistan for some time. And while he was over there, at the base that he was at, they had a tent set up with internet access. He was able to Skype with his family. Mm-hmm. And I had contact with them probably every other day.
Yeah.
So, is that what you had when you were in Iraq?
No, unfortunately not. We did have internet access. We eventually got internet access while we were in Mosul, and we started to establish our living area in this warehouse. I think we had a couple of computers, and they had internet access, and but there was no Skype or anything like that. It was just all email, email and family members and letting them know that you're doing okay or whatever. And that was hard to get onto because obviously you can imagine everybody wanted to get on and send something home. So they had somebody there monitoring. You had to sign in, and you could only 10 minutes at a time, and then you had to get off. And everybody was respectful. Everybody knew that people wanted to send emails home, but the majority of my communication was through letters, old-fashioned. Sending out letters and receiving a letter is nothing like receiving a letter or a package while you're over there. But we eventually got this Iraqi gentleman that they allowed to come on, and he had a phone, and he allowed us, we had to pay him X amount per minute. I really don't remember what it was, but it wasn't cheap. And, we could call home with it. And so my family kind of dubbed it the 9-day plan because it was about every 9-10 days when I got the opportunity to call home. And we didn't really have any money either to pay the guy. So at that time, to get money, we were only allowed $200 a month, and that was it. And to get that $200, every once in a while, the finance people would be in the area, and we would get wind of it, and they would round up a truck and say, "Hey, who wants to go see finance?" And of course, you had a lot of people. Most people wanted to go, And so we'd go out, and I think the finance people were at the Mosul airport, and we had obviously took that over. And so they were there, and we'd drive down through there. I think it took us about an hour or so to get out there, and just go see finance and get our $200 or $100, whatever you wanted to get. We didn't have any money. We didn't have anything to spend it on. I mean, eventually these Iraqis would come up and try to sell us, CDs and DVDs. They're all bootleg stuff, but we bought it, something to do. A TV, a little 13-inch TV, and a bootleg DVD. That was pretty good stuff back then. So yeah, that's kind of how it was when I was there.
So it's not like later on in Iraq where you started hearing about Burger King setting up a stand.
No, and I was actually shocked when I heard that stuff. I mean, like, I just never, like, when I think of my experience in Iraq is not going to be the same as somebody who's been there recently. Two totally different viewpoints and two totally different experiences. So yeah, it was kind of shocking when I heard all that stuff going in over there, and so yeah, it's different now from what I hear than when I was there.
I don't know how much you want to share about this, but you did have one soldier in your unit that was killed while you were over there.
Sure. Yeah, we had, it was during that ambush, there was a soldier that was killed, and the soldier that lost his legs too in that ambush, and some other ones that had some shrapnel and stuff like that. But yeah, obviously it's one of those things where as a soldier, I know personally me, you wake up every day and you were kind of thanking your lucky stars that you were there, but you also knew that there was a possibility that you never knew what the day was going to bring or the night that you could end up dying. And that did happen over there. And we had some deaths due to accidents where a soldier fell off a roof and died, and obviously deaths due to the insurgents. So yeah, it's definitely an experience, and you will remember it forever, especially when you're attending the ceremony and remembering him and or those people. But yeah, it's just one of those things,
Do you?
Well, yeah, one of the things that we do to commemorate those that have fallen is we wear a KIA bracelet, which is short for Killed in Action, and that's been around since Vietnam, and before that, I think. But yeah, we ordered KIA bracelets, and I still have mine, and I keep it. Either I wear it or I keep it in a special place, and just to kind of commemorate those that have fallen, and it marks the day, and I think it's a real good thing.
Yeah, I remember being at work one night and saw that you had that bracelet on.
Yeah.
And asking you about it. I didn't know at that time that you had experienced anything like that.
Right.
And you were telling me about it, and it just kind of blew me away that, I mean, here you are back in the States. I guess in a situation like that, it's not like having a coworker die. It's more like having a family member almost.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you lose somebody that's been around and stuff, and lose somebody in that way, it's
Right.
It's different. Losing somebody here at old age or whatever, but seeing anybody being hurt or lost in that capacity, it's just it's no good. So yeah.
You've shown me some of your commendations and awards that because we needed to include them in the biographical data form for this project.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to tell me about an unofficial letter of commendation that you got that doesn't fit neatly into any category.
Sure.
You brought that along today, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. It was a letter of recommendation, and basically it was from a staff sergeant, And
I'd actually like you, if you wouldn't mind, I'd actually like you to read the parts of it that just really hit home to me.
Sure.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
Can you grab that book over there?
Let's see where we got it at. Okay, yeah, he gave me this letter one day. Didn't ask for it. I really didn't. I didn't expect it, but he was very.
This is someone you supported over in Iraq, right?
Yeah. Basically, he writes in here, Staff Sergeant Duffe has a unique ability to lead soldiers into action. Due to his personal efforts, he was directly responsible for saving the lives of my men on numerous occasions. He was able to diffuse dangerous situations with his decisive decision-making process and courage, and has been an invaluable asset to my organization. I would be proud to serve with Staff Sergeant Duffe again. He's one of the best squad leaders that have served within my 12 years and would make a tremendous asset to any organization. A type of NCO needed in combat, and lives the warrior ethos in word and deed.
Now,
So,
what is this guy's position in the Army today?
today I lost touch with him, but I still remain in touch with people that still know him, and he is a sergeant major in the Army today.
Which is about as high as you can get as a non-com, right?
Yeah, and I think the last time I heard he was down at Fort Benning training soldiers. Not him personally, but he was in charge of, the training program down at Fort Benning to train future infantry soldiers.
I just wanted you to read that one because you didn't really point that out to me when we were going through it. You were just giving me the information that I needed concerning the official commendations and that sort of thing.
Right.
And I saw that and asked you about it. And to me, it just speaks to me about things about you that you wouldn't be telling about yourself.
Right.
And I'm sorry if I kind of put you on the spot with that, but I really wanted it to be included in this this interview.
Yeah, no problem.
So let's wrap things up a little bit. From Iraq, I think you actually got your promotion to Staff Sergeant D6 on the plane on the way back to the United States. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was an interesting story too. I had, in order to get promoted in the sergeant ranks, E5 and E6, you have to go in front of a board of sergeant majors and first sergeants, and they evaluate you and they ask you questions, and based on their evaluation and the points that you've already attained to get to that promotion level, as they decide whether you get promoted or not. And while I was over in Iraq, business does go on. So, meaning that people still have to get promoted. And so I was up for promotion, and I studied while I was over in Iraq. And I went through the board while I was over in Iraq. And I passed the board, but wasn't sure, after that, you really don't know when your promotion's coming. But on the way home, we were flying over the Atlantic Ocean, and from Germany, we were going to go into flying to Maine, and actually made it. My platoon sergeant got up and made an announcement, told me to stand up with another guy, and told me he was going to promote me to staff sergeant right then and there. So they pinned the staff sergeant rank on me in an airplane coming home from Iraq over the Atlantic Ocean. So. It's one of those promotions that, I couldn't tell you where I was when I got E5 promotion, but, that particular one, yeah, obviously it was special. So.
Right. When you got back to Fort Campbell, you were, what, a squad leader at that point?
Yeah.
Okay. And you continued now in a non-combat role to lead training. Why don't you tell me about your injury, what led up to that, and that was kind of trying to recover from that, even though it was a non-combat type injury. it really affected your service.
Yeah, it did. Coming back, you have kind of a decompression period where they were, at first coming back, it was all about trying to readjust to civilian life and what we were doing before. So we did that for a couple of months, and everybody took some time off and visited family and stuff like that. But once we got back from that, obviously, once again, you have to gear up and get ready and continue to train for that next deployment. So we still went out to the range, still went out to the field, and it was September of 2004. We were scheduled to go out for a field mission and on Fort Campbell, and we air assaulted in by helicopter, and we had a mock mission. We had to land here, meet up with this squad there, and then we would attack this village at night, stuff like that. So the first day, it was raining all day, and we were traveling through, and we were trying to meet up with this other squad, and we had to cross this ravine, and I sent one of my members down, and but I told him at first, I said, be careful because it's really wet, and you might slip and hurt yourself, and we're carrying 60 plus pounds on our back, and with our weapons and stuff like that. And he made it down okay, and I went down second. And as soon as I got to the top, and I slipped and snapped my ankle at the top, inverted it, and then I just kind of slid and fell and rolled down this hill. I estimated about 30 plus feet, and then I landed at the rocks below, and I knew I was in a lot of pain, but I've never had a broken bone or anything before. So everybody was all quiet and silent because, I'm out there and nobody wants to say anything. They knew something bad had happened. So I tried to get up and try to walk, and I fell down and tried to get up again and walk. And, I had in my mind at the time, I had no notion of, yeah, I'm hurt, let's quit. I just wanted to meet up with this other squad who was across the ravine. So I got up on the other side, and I kept trying to walk, and obviously I was making a fool of myself because I look over and I see everybody looking at me, and they asked me, are you done yet, because they apparently heard 2 snaps. And so yeah, I had to make my way out of the woods. It was a very long walk. I had a stick helping me, and I had my lieutenant with me, and it took us, I'd say, a good hour to get out to where the first sergeant was. And nobody knew the extent of the injury really, but I remember we had some Op 4 guys, the guys playing the enemy, come by, and they told me to lay down and be quiet. And so I had to lay down in the woods and his weeds, and we had the Op 4 guy walk within 10 feet of us, and I'm laying there with a broken ankle. And so we were still, training. And the Humvee came, took me to the hospital, and I broke my ankle, and that kind of was the end of my infantry career. So
Yeah, you have pins in there to this day, right?
yeah, I do. I had to have 2 screws put in, and yeah, it's one of those things where it was towards the end of my enlistment, and I already re-enlisted one time, and basically it came down to basically me accepting another job within the military.
In an office.
Right. So, that's kind of what they were talking about, and some supply capacity or something like that. And, I just didn't want to do that. And I had an option to either get out or re-enlist at that time. And, I chose to get out and go to college, which is what I did. So, yeah.
And is what you're still doing.
Which is what I'm still doing, yeah. I graduated from Jefferson College, this college here, with my Associates of Arts degree, and currently a student at University of Missouri St. Louis. So yeah.
While working full-time.
While working full-time.
And you've added to your family within the past year and a half, right?
Yeah, I got a son that's almost 2 now, so it's been
almost 2 years, man, I can't believe that.
Yeah, he's growing like a little weed, but yeah, it's life is good, and I don't regret any decisions that I made as far as joining the Army. I think it was the best thing for me. At the time I wasn't ready for college, and when I got out of the Army and went to college, I was ready. And when I I went my first semester, I had a 4.0. My second semester, I had another 4.0. So, I would never have been able to achieve that, I think, if I went straight out of high school. I just wasn't ready. So, yeah, I think everything that I've done military-wise, I wouldn't take anything back. And it's one of those great experiences that I'll tell my kids and my grandkids about.
My final question for you is or was going to be, do you think you are a better person for having gone through the experiences you have? And I think I know what that answer is. Go ahead.
Yeah, I definitely, I was raised in a great family, and I think, if I hadn't gone through those experiences, due to my family and my upbringing, obviously I would have been kind of the same as I am now. But, I think definitely doing that at such a young age and learning that you have to work hard and nothing's given to you, and you have to follow rules and you have to be disciplined, and, having that instilled with me and living that and at such an early age, I think that definitely is going to play a factor in my life forever. So yeah, I truly enjoyed my experience in the military. Obviously, some days are better than others, and but I have a lot of friendships that I still keep in touch with these guys, and definitely think, no doubt about it, it made me a better person for it.
All right. Well, Phil, thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule to help me with this project.
Not a problem, Phil.
And I appreciate it. I appreciate your friendship too, man.
Yeah, I do too.
All right.
All right.